All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the salary cap in the NFL. It rose kind of significantly, more than anticipated. And I wanted to talk about what teams that benefited the most from that announcement. So, the NFL informed teams that the 2025 per team salary cap will fall into the range of 277.5 million to 281.5 million, which is up from last year, and the cap was 255.4 million, which is that's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of money. The cap will have increased by more than 53 million over the last 2 years, and usually, it's not that big of a number, but it has a lot to do with the NFL making a lot of money, and this helps a lot of teams out. Well, pretty much all the teams, but one of the teams that I wanted to bring up that this helps significantly is the Bengals, because the Bengals have several players that they need to negotiate with and come to an agreement on long-term deals. You have two receivers in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and then also Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson on the defensive side of the ball. And Joe Burrow is going to have to help out with restructuring his contract. I'm pretty sure he's open to doing that. So now it doesn't look so difficult it's a little bit easier, at least, for the Bengals to maybe keep everybody. And that's huge because, T. Higgins still wants to run it back with this team, even though, hey, he wants his new contract. And, if it ends up not being with the Bengals, they could trade him and get assets for him. But, now there's a chance he could stay. Jamar Chase, even if this didn't happen, Jamar Chase was going to be a Bengal because you have to pay him. And, Trey Hendrickson is one of the, better defensive players. He was up for Defensive Player of the Year. You got to keep him. And maybe with that cap space, maybe there's some left over to maybe go out and add somebody in free agency and make a smart decision there. And I mean on the defensive side of the ball. Because really, I think, you'll have some money left over, maybe. But if you don't, you really got to nail these picks in the draft because they're going to have to go defensive heavy. Maybe offensive linemen too, but the Bengals really got to improve this defense. And how many times we've talked about it? We've talked about it a million times. But this is good news for them. And the two groups that this impacts the most, as I was reading last night, you got the franchise tag. Teams might not necessarily, teams could use it because now you have, the expanded cap, and it won't be a huge hit on it. Or maybe, because you have a lot of money, you could try to negotiate, a long-term deal. I don't know how many people are going to get, how many players are going to get the franchise tag. That deadline is coming up soon. The Bengals, they're really the only one that have made news on, using it on a player. But I don't know what other teams are planning on doing with it. I mean, obviously there are candidates for the franchise tag on each team, but not every team is going to use the franchise tag. So the 2024 bump is unlikely to change whom teams want to tag, but it could tip the scales if a team was wavering. Then the other group is that is going to be affected is the NFL's so-called middle class. An NFC executive projected that an increasing number of Tier 2 and Tier 3 free agent players and their agents will misjudge the markets of what they can command. So now, because of teams getting more money, now it's like, oh, well, now we can ask for a larger contract because they'd be able to pay it. Not necessarily. And I think this goes for every sport. Most teams now, I think, have wisened up. The front offices have wisened up where they're not going to just pay you to pay you. They have their price. And look, teams are unless teams are desperate, they're going to be willing to wait it out for you to drop your price down, and then they'll go out and sign you if they're able to. So that's another interesting thing to take a look at. But Also, I wanted to get back to the teams. The Patriots, they have a ton of cap space. So the Patriots, they have more than 120 million in projected cap space. And now you add this. This was before the new number was released. And they're going to make a big splash in free agency. I would imagine that they're going to. And maybe they go out and they trade, you know, maybe they go out in the draft. I think they have the fourth pick. So, if Travis Hunter or Tetsuo McMillan falls to them, you would figure that they're going to draft him. Or if they go, well, not necessarily. They could also go with drafting an offensive lineman. They definitely need to improve the offensive line. Now they could sign someone in free agency like Trey Smith, the guard for the Chiefs. If he ends up leaving, the Patriots would give him a big contract. They could definitely do that. So, this only helps the Patriots. Patriots are definitely going to be a better team next season. And if they play their cards right, if they spend the money wisely, yeah, I'm not saying that they, are going to win the division or anything, but, they definitely will be an improved team. They have the quarterback, and Mike Vrabel, I think, is going to do wonders with them in his first year. I've said it over and over again. I like the Josh McDaniels hire as the offensive coordinator. The defense is usually good. So if you improve this offense and, you fix this offensive line and get more playmakers, I mean, how is this? You can't tell me this team's not going to be better. So, the Patriots are another team that really benefits from it. I mean, every team is going to benefit from it. And then you have the Saints. The Saints are always dealing with, cap troubles. But now, this kind of helps them out a little bit. They're not going to have to make a ton of moves to try to get themselves under the cap. I'm waiting for the day that they eventually do get under the cap because it just seems like this has been a problem for them for years. And it just seems like it's never going to get better. But it's going to have to at some point. They have to begin the rebuilding process because you have all these aging players. It doesn't sound like they're going to do, well, like I just said, they're not going to do anything too drastic. Kellen Moore met with the media, and, it seems like Derek Carr is going to still be the quarterback, but you never know. And they still got Kamara, and you still got the older guys on defense, but at some point they're going to have to change. They're going to have to change things up. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this is kind of a big deal. We didn't talk about this the other day, but I figured we'd bring it up now. And also another team as well you could talk about is the Rams with Matthew Stafford. They're trying to rework that deal with him, and there's a chance that he could still be traded, but I've said it all along. I think he's still going to stay with the Rams, and I think this will help out the Rams a little bit. It'll give them more flexibility there to try to get this deal done. And I think ultimately they will, and I think Stafford's going to be a Ram next year. I would be a little surprised if he ends up, getting traded. Because I think he should stay with the Rams. I think this is the best team that gives him the best chance to win in terms of the teams that need quarterbacks. And I think going anywhere else besides LA, I think that would hurt him a little bit. I think he would still do well wherever he goes because I think he's still got some good football left in him. I mean, he definitely showed you that, but the Rams are the best place for him. So I think he's got to stay there. Cooper Kupp won't be staying. Maybe that changes some things for them. Maybe they say, hey, you know what? Let's rework this contract. Let's keep you around. I just hope something happens because I would like to, get into the off season and talk about, what will be happening. But we're almost there. We got a few weeks ago before the new league year starts. But, I wanted to get here soon. And it will. But that's another team that this helps out is the Rams because, they got to figure things out with their quarterback. And we will talk about another quarterback later in the show. Little brief take on that, who was spotted out in public by TMZ, and they asked him a couple of questions. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the salary cap increase. What teams do you think this benefits the most? I mean, I kind of just gave you, some of them. Teams with a large amount of cap space, teams with, very limited cap space, teams that are looking to sign a bunch of players. I guess when you could also talk about Dallas, too, because Dallas still has to sign Micah Parsons to a deal. And, obviously Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb take up, a chunk of their cap. So that definitely helps them, when they're trying to figure out a long-term deal with Micah Parsons. But, yeah, let me know in the comments. Before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate, and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. That makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the New York Yankees. Actually, a couple things with the Yankees because there was some breaking news before we hopped on here. We'll talk about them, however, extending their manager, Aaron Boone, through the 2027 season. And I will give you my thoughts on that. Was that the right move? We'll get into all that when we return, and I'll tell you what I was alluding to, which you probably already know, but Yankees did make some headlines before we hopped on here, and I wanted to get into what that was specifically. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.